Welcome to the Chronicles of Rome. Episode 1, Before the Eagle, the land and peoples of ancient Italy. Before the roar of marching legions, before the Senate echoed with oratory and ambition, before the emperors carved their names into stone, there was only the land and the people who walked it. This is where our story begins, not with Rome itself, but with the world that gave birth to it. The Italian peninsula, stretching from the towering Alps in the north to the fertile lands of Campania and the rocky shores of Calabria, was never an empty canvas. By the time Rome's founders took their first steps, the land had already been shaped by thousands of years of human presence, by movement, settlement, belief, and memory. We must begin not just before Rome, but before writing, before cities, before walls. As the last ice age came to a close around 10,000 BCE, the great glaciers that had once blanketed Europe began to retreat. Italy, particularly its central and southern regions, became a haven of biodiversity, a patchwork of dense forests, rolling hills, volcanic plains, and rich river valleys. Humans had already lived in this region for tens of thousands of years, stretching back into the Paleolithic. In caves such as Grotta Puglici in Apulia and Grotta di Fumane in the north, archaeologists have uncovered stone tools, cave paintings, and burials dating back over 30,000 years. These early peoples, likely Cro-Magnon, anatomically modern humans, lived in small nomadic groups. They hunted red deer, wild boar, and ibex. They fished in rivers and foraged in forests. They left behind traces: flint blades, carved bone tools, ochre-stained burials, and the outlines of painted hands. As the climate warmed, the Mesolithic period began. From 9,000 to 6,000 BCE, human communities adapted to their new environment. They settled near lakes and rivers, using microlithic tools and perhaps taming the first dogs. Seasonal migration continued, but signs of more permanent dwellings began to appear. Around 6,000 BCE, the Neolithic revolution reached Italy. This was not a single moment, but a slow transformation. Farming, animal domestication, and pottery arrived, first through maritime migration from the eastern Mediterranean and then overland through the Balkans. With it came new cultural traditions, ways of life, and perhaps even new people. These early agricultural communities are identified today by their pottery styles. Along the Adriatic and Tyrrhenian coasts, two traditions dominate: impressa ware and cardial ware. These ceramics, decorated with shell impressions and fine incisions, are not markers of ethnicity, but of influence and exchange. They tell us that Italy was already part of a wider Mediterranean world. Permanent villages arose along rivers and fertile plains. People grew wheat and barley, raised goats and pigs, and wove textiles from flax. They buried their dead with care, often with grave goods suggesting social roles, spiritual beliefs, and perhaps the first signs of hierarchy. Between 4000 and 3000 BCE, the Neolithic cultures of Italy diversified further. Regional identities developed. In central Italy, the Rinaldone and Gaudo cultures appeared, marked by megalithic tombs and finely crafted ceramics. In the north, the Remedello culture introduced the use of copper tools. This was the beginning of the Chalcolithic, or Copper Age. The Copper Age, lasting from around 3500 to 2300 BCE, was a period of transition. Stone tools still dominated, but metal was gaining ground. Societies became more stratified. Burials like those of the Remedello culture show individuals interred with weapons, ornaments, and copper daggers. In southern Italy, the Laterza and Gaudo cultures practiced elaborate funeral rites, including collective tombs and painted ceramics. This period also saw the emergence of long-distance trade. Obsidian from Lipari reached central Italy. Jadeite axes from the Alps traveled hundreds of kilometers. Amber from the Baltic reached as far south as Etruria. Italy was no longer a peripheral land. It was becoming a crossroads. Around 1700 BCE, a new force emerged in the north, the Terra Mare culture of the Po Valley. These people built rectangular, moated settlements, proto-urban in form, with wooden palisades, raised dwellings, and planned street grids. Their society was organized, hierarchical, and agriculturally productive. They practiced cremation, stored grain in silos, and used advanced bronze tools. But by 1150 BCE, the Terra Mare culture vanished. Climate change, overfarming, or social collapse may have played a role. Their disappearance coincides with the broader Bronze Age collapse that swept across the Mediterranean. The fall of the Mycenaeans, the Hittites, and the widespread disruption caused by the mysterious Sea Peoples. In this vacuum, new cultural forms began to rise. Between 1800 and 1600 BCE, Indo-European speaking peoples entered Italy. Their arrival was gradual, complex, and layered. Some came through the eastern Alpine passes. Others followed the Adriatic coast from the Balkans. They brought with them new languages, new burial rites, and a warrior ethos. These newcomers didn't replace the old societies, they merged with them. Over generations, the older Neolithic and Chalcolithic cultures blended with the Indo-European newcomers. The result was a mosaic of Italic peoples, Latins, Oscans, Umbrians, Sabines, and many others. They built fortified hill settlements. They practiced tumulus burials, large mounds built over elite graves. They used bronze swords, spiral ornaments, and horse trappings. Their languages, though not written, formed the basis of what would become Latin and its sister tongues. In the central Apennines, the Apennine culture thrived. These were semi-nomadic herders, pastoralists who followed seasonal routes through Italy's rugged spine. They built stone villages, tended flocks, and bartered with coastal communities. To the north, the Proto-Villanovan and then Villanovan cultures emerged. Beginning around 1100 BCE, these societies cremated their dead and placed the ashes in urns shaped like huts. They used iron, not just bronze. They lived in compact villages with signs of planning, and their grave goods show increasing social stratification. They represent the earliest phase of what would become Etruscan civilization. The Etruscans, rising around 800 BCE, would build Italy's first true cities. Veii, Tarquinia, Clusium, and others boasted stone temples, advanced plumbing, and written inscriptions. The Etruscans practiced augury and haruspicy, rituals for reading divine signs. They believed in an ordered cosmos, where fate was deciphered through sacrifice and the movement of birds. They borrowed from the Greeks and Phoenicians, but they created something uniquely their own. They wrote in an adapted Greek alphabet. They painted tombs with scenes of music, feasting, and games. Their kings ruled with ceremony and priestly authority. Their influence on Rome, cultural, religious, political, would be immense. Farther south, the Greeks began founding colonies. Cumae, Naples, Tarentum, and Syracuse became hubs of Greek language, religion, and art. Italy's southern coast, Magna Graecia, became a mirror of the Aegean. From these cities came coinage, temples, theater, and mythology. The Romans would absorb these gifts and make them their own. The Phoenicians, too, had arrived. Traders from Tyre and Sidon, they established colonies in western Sicily, Sardinia, and eventually Carthage. They traded in purple dye, glass, and luxury goods. They worshipped Baal and Astarte. Their ships plied the coasts of Italy, bringing goods and gods with them. Yet even as foreign powers shaped Italy's shores, the interior remained fiercely local. The Samnites, Marsians, Volsci, Aequi, and Sabines guarded their independence. They lived in hill forts, spoke their own dialects, and followed ancestral rites. Their traditions would later be absorbed, but never fully erased by Rome. In this diverse land, connections deepened. Trade expanded, shared rituals emerged, burial customs aligned. A common Italic identity, loose, fragmented, but real, began to take shape. And somewhere in Latium, on a bend of the Tiber River, a few simple huts appeared on the Palatine Hill. They were built of wattle and daub with thatched roofs and wooden posts. Inside, extended families cooked over hearths and buried their dead nearby. These were Latin-speaking tribes, farmers, herders, warriors. They worshipped the Lares and Penes, spirits of the home. They read the sky for omens. They lived in clans. They traded with the Etruscans, the Greeks, and their Italic cousins. To archaeology, these huts are the start of a village. To Romans, they were the seed of an empire. Rome, they said, was born of destiny. Aeneas, son of Venus, fled burning Troy and founded a new line of kings. From that line came Romulus and Remus, twins raised by a she-wolf, fated to build a city of strength, a city of the gods, a city eternal. Next time, we'll explore those legends. We'll follow Aeneas across storm-tossed seas. We'll stand with Romulus as he draws a boundary in blood, and we'll witness the moment Rome is born. But for now, remember this. Before there was Rome, there was Italy, a land of rivers and ridges, of mystery and memory, of tribes, tombs, and transformation. Rome did not invent civilization, it inherited it, transformed it, and in time claimed it as its own. This has been the Chronicles of Rome. Join us next time as legend gives way to destiny, and a city rises from myth.